Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are jumping straight into a question that really shapes every single career. When you measure a leader, what's the real metric? Is it how they start or how they finish? I mean, you look around the professional world and the obsession is all about the beginning, right? The fast scale up, the big IPO, the 30 under 30
Like the
lists.
headline stuff.
Exactly. We celebrate all the early wins. But our sources today, they present this paradox. They argue that focus completely misses the point because finishing well, the long game, that's the true measure of influence, and it's the part we almost always overlook.
And that tension is exactly where we're going. Our mission here is to unpack this idea that leadership isn't really about titles or awards. It's measured by, the faithfulness, the integrity, and the actual sustainable impact that's left behind when a leader moves on.
And we're drawing from a specific source for this.
We are. We're going to be drawing heavily from a pretty remarkable historical document, the farewell address from Paul to the Ephesian elders in Acts 20. It's basically a masterclass in how to build a legacy.
Okay, so let's unpack that. This shift in metrics. We're also used to the fleeting measures. Growth percentage, quarterly revenue, a big award. They give you that immediate validation.
Right.
So why is focusing only on that stuff, the fleeting stuff, so dangerous in the long run?
It just creates a really fragile institution. What's so fascinating is how the whole definition of success has to change. When a leader can shift their focus from what's fleeting, like, say, quarterly reports, to what is enduring, so structural and cultural health, well, that's when leadership becomes real stewardship.
And the danger.
The danger of only chasing immediate results is you risk leaving behind a trail of, unfulfilled potential, or an organization that can't function without you. The minute the market shifts or you leave, the whole thing just collapses because it was built for a sprint, not a marathon.
Okay, so let's look at that example. Paul's farewell. He knows he's not going to see these leaders again. If he were a modern CEO, you'd expect a presentation, right? A slide deck of his biggest wins.
Oh, for sure. Conversions, new sites, global reach, all the key metrics.
But what did he talk about instead?
He did the total opposite of a victory lap. He didn't list achievements. He didn't boast about his influence. Instead, he spent his time talking about perseverance, about being vigilant against future problems, and just the need to care for the community. These are values completely outside of normal performance metrics.
So he was preparing the next generation.
Yes, he was calling them not just to continue his work, but to guard the mission itself, to make sure its purpose was enduring. That final speech just hammers home that leadership is a journey and a legacy. It's not a sprint, and it is definitely not just a ledger of your accomplishments.
And for you, listening right now, this is so relevant. I mean, in today's professional world where everything is about disruption, the leaders who only chase the headlines, well, they often find their organizations just don't have the cultural depth to survive the next big shift.
Exactly. The ones who focus on that faithful finish, they're the ones creating real impact that goes way beyond trends and titles. They build institutions, not just successful projects.
And you can't have that kind of enduring impact without integrity. That seems to be the foundation.
It's the cornerstone, and it's the next critical piece we have to get into.
Let's do it. Integrity often gets boiled down to something simple, like be honest. But the sources are defining it much more broadly here.
They are. In this context, finishing well, integrity is holistic. It's moral uprightness, yes, but it's also transparency, consistency, and a deep alignment across your whole life, not just what people see in the boardroom.
It's the private alignment.
That's it. The private alignment dictates the public outcome. If there's a gap between a leader's public face and their private behavior, the foundation for trust is already gone. And trust is the relational capital you absolutely need to endure.
And how did Paul model this specifically?
Well, he gets very practical. He insists, I did not covet anyone's silver or gold or clothing. Now, that phrase is incredibly powerful because it shows active integrity. It's an outright refusal to exploit his position for personal gain. He didn't just tell them to be ethical, he showed them.
And that insight really hits home for a modern audience, doesn't it? A leader's financial discipline. That becomes an early test of their ability to finish well. In a world obsessed with executive perks and bonuses, just being transparent about what you will and won't accept is a huge guardrail against falling apart later.
Absolutely. I mean, a lack of transparency around money is one of the fastest ways a leader loses all credibility, even if they're hitting every other metric. That selflessness, that integrity, it's the currency that builds real trust. It lets people trust your motives, not just your skills.
We see this struggle all the time. Let's go back to that modern application you mentioned, Sarah, who inherited a nonprofit. She was under all this pressure from her board to hit these huge growth numbers, right?
Right. And she faced the classic temptation. A huge donation was offered, but it was from a donor whose own business practices completely contradicted the nonprofit's mission.
And compromising would have delivered those flashy growth numbers.
Oh, instantly. The kind of metrics boards love to see.
But she resisted. She chose transparency and her ethical standards instead, even though it meant slower growth. So what happened?
Well, the initial growth was slower, no doubt, but the organization she built was far more sustainable, more resilient. Her stakeholders, her employees, they knew they could trust her. The organization's reputation for integrity actually became its competitive advantage. Her faithful integrity laid the groundwork for a legacy.
And the cost of failing that test is just.
Yeah.
It's huge. Loss of trust, erosion of influence, a damaged legacy. Integrity really is that unseen force field. So how do leaders actually cultivate this? It's not automatic.
No, it's not magic. It requires structure. Leaders have to do periodic, honest self-assessments. I don't just mean performance reviews, but character reviews. And crucially, you have to build external accountability. You need mentors, a board, advisors, people who have permission to tell you the hard truth, especially about your blind spots around influence and money.
So that structural self-awareness is essential. But even with all that, the journey is never smooth. Leadership is full of trials. And endurance, just that sheer ability to keep going, seems to be the true evidence of faithfulness.
It is. Endurance, or perseverance, is the engine that gets you to the finish line. The leaders who finish well aren't the ones who avoided all the storms. They're the ones who navigated through them and stayed anchored to their mission, especially when things got tough.
And the sources give some clear examples of this.
They do. Look at Moses. His trial wasn't a single event. It was decades of exhausting leadership in the desert, facing constant rebellion from the very people he was trying to lead. He had every reason to quit.
That feels a lot like a modern CEO trying to steer a company through a long economic downturn, managing all the internal conflict.
Exactly. Or think about Joseph. His trial was deep personal betrayal, slavery, false imprisonment. But his endurance was marked by maintaining his integrity even in the lowest positions. It shows that sometimes trials are actually the training ground for future influence.
And Nehemiah.
Nehemiah is all about strategic resilience. He was rebuilding Jerusalem's walls while facing political opposition, military threats, and his own team's exhaustion all at once. He was a master of threat mitigation.
So what's the blueprint for a modern leader there?
It's about institutionalizing that resilience. Stress test your financial models. Build redundant revenue streams. Nehemiah had builders holding a tool in one hand and a weapon in the other. It means having governance that prevents those knee-jerk decisions in a crisis. Endurance is a discipline. It's a muscle you build.
That focus on building muscle, on the refining process, leads perfectly into this idea of legacy. If you make it through the trials with integrity, then your definition of success has to shift. It can't just be about what I achieved. It has to become about multiplication.
It absolutely has to. The real test of a faithful finish is sustainability. Paul's charge to those elders was all about the future health of the community. He told them to keep watch over yourselves and all the flock. The ultimate measure becomes the leaders you raise and the culture you embed.
That requires a huge amount of humility, though. It's hard for a successful founder to step back and let their successor shine, knowing that person might even surpass them.
It's the ultimate act of selflessness. A perfect historical example is John Wesley. He was a phenomenal leader, but he wasn't building a cult of personality around himself. He invested everything in mentoring local preachers and building organizational systems that could outlast him.
And that's why Methodism endured. The system and the successors outlasted the original personality.
Precisely. That is multiplication. It isn't just having a few proteges, it's building the system that lets them thrive without you. You have to identify potential leaders early, give them structured mentoring, and delegate real responsibility, and then let them make mistakes.
And then you have to celebrate their successes.
You have to. And deflect the credit back to the broader mission, not your own genius. When you can multiply yourself, it proves the mission is bigger than the messenger.
So if we boil this whole deep dive down, bringing these ancient principles into today's world, what is the one non-negotiable metric of success for a leader who truly finishes well?
The ultimate measure is what the sources would call spiritual fruitfulness. For a professional audience, that translates to lasting organizational sustainability and transformed outcomes. It means you left behind stronger communities, empowered people, and a thriving culture, whether that's in a company or a nonprofit. The metric is what keeps growing long after you're gone.
So finishing well isn't an accident.
Not at all. It's a deliberate integration of all these things. Integrity, that unseen alignment of values and actions. Perseverance, the endurance through trials. And multiplication, that selfless investment in the next generation.
So the journey starts with a call, it gets tested by all these challenges, and in the end, it's measured by faithfulness to that mission. It requires humility, vigilance, and looking beyond the immediate wins. And this leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider, and it's drawn from these sources. Leaders like Moses and Paul often began their journeys feeling, well, acutely inadequate. Moses was hesitant about his ability to speak. Paul started his work after the massive setback of being a persecutor. So here's the question. How does accepting a starting point of weakness fundamentally protect a leader from the later temptations of pride and self-interest, the very things that cause so many to fail before the finish line, that humility at the start? It might just be the essential shield that ensures a lasting legacy. Think about how your own starting point is shaping your future finish.